Everyone in the Obsidian Shadow Pack thought Elora was broken, a wolfless omega, good for nothing but scrubbing floors and taking abuse. They laughed at her. They beat her. But they didn't know the truth. She wasn't wolfless. She was hiding a secret that was practically a death sentence. Under her skin lived a white wolf, the rarest, most powerful creature in their history, hunted for its pelt. For 5 years, she swallowed poison to keep her hidden. But then Alpha King Kaelin Thorn arrived and demanded a pack inspection. No exceptions. When they dragged Elora to the center of the arena and forced her to shift, the world didn't just stop. It shattered. Because the king didn't kill her. He knelt. The liquid in the vial was a murky, bruised purple. It smelled like rot and burnt sugar. Elora's hand shook as she uncorked it, the glass clinking softly against the chipped porcelain of the bathroom sink. "Drink it, Elora," she whispered to herself, staring into the cracked mirror. Drink it or die. Her reflection was a ghost. Pale skin, dark circles under eyes that used to be a vibrant green, but were now dulled by exhaustion. At 22 she looked 30. Her hands were red and raw from the lye soap she used to scrub the floors of the pack house, and her uniform, a grey rag meant for the lowest omegas, hung loosely on her starving frame. She tipped the vial back. The wolfsbane concentrate burned her throat like liquid fire. It hit her stomach and twisted, sending a wave of nausea crashing through her. She gripped the sink knuckles, white retching silently. She couldn't throw it up. She had to keep it down. Deep inside her, her wolf Lumina whimpered. She was weak, sedated by the poison Elora fed them every morning. It was torture. It was like chaining a hurricane inside a glass jar, but it was necessary. If the Obsidian Shadow Pack knew what she was, she wouldn't be scrubbing floors. She would be mounted on a wall. "Elora, you lazy rat! Get down here!" The shrill voice of Seraphina, the Beta's daughter, pierced through the thin floorboards. Elora quickly hid the vial behind a loose brick in the wall, splashed cold water on her face, and ran. Downstairs, the kitchen was in chaos. Steam rose from giant pots, and the scent of roasted venison filled the air. But underlying the food was the sharp, acrid scent of anxiety. The pack members were tense. Seraphina was standing by the island, looking impeccable in a red silk dress that cost more than Elora's life's earnings. She had her father's cruel mouth and eyes that looked for weakness, like a hawk hunting mice. "Where have you been?" she snapped, stepping into Elora's personal space. She smelled of expensive perfume and rot. "The Alpha King arrives in 3 hours. 3 hours. I was cleaning the upstairs lavatory. "Seraphina," Elora said, keeping her eyes on the floor. Eye contact was seen as a challenge. Challenges got her beaten. She scoffed and kicked a bucket of dirty water over across the tiles Elora had just dried. "Well, you missed a spot. Clean it up, and then get to the ballroom. My father wants the silver polished until he can see his ugly reflection in it." "Yes, Seraphina." Elora dropped to her knees, grabbing a rag. As she soaked up the water, she heard Seraphina whispering to her friend, a gamma named Jessica. "Can you believe the king is actually coming here?" Jessica whispered, excitement making her voice tremble. "King Kaelin Thorn. They say he's 7 feet tall and has killed 100 rogues with his bare hands." "He's not coming for rogues," Seraphina said, a smug smile on her lips. "He's coming for a mate. The royal oracle prophesied that his queen is hiding in the northern territories. That's us." She ran a hand through her perfectly curled blonde hair. "And when he sees me, he won't need to look any further." Elora's heart stopped. King Kaelin Thorn. The alpha of alphas. The rumors about him were terrifying. They said he could sense a wolf's lineage just by looking at them. They said his command, his voice, could force any wolf to shift against their will. If he came here, if he saw her, the wolf's bane masked her scent. To everyone here, she smelled like nothing, just a human defect born to werewolf parents. That's why they hated her. She was a broken wolf. But the king, his power was ancient. I have to leave, she thought, panic rising in her chest. I have to run. But where she had no money, no car, and the pack borders were patrolled by Beta Marcus's enforcers. Marcus, Seraphina's father, was the one who had taken her in after her parents died in a rogue attack 5 years ago. He claimed it was charity. In reality, he needed a slave. Elora finished mopping the floor and hurried to the ballroom. Beta Marcus was there, barking orders at a group of terrified Omegas. He was a large man, thick-necked and brutal. You, Marcus pointed a meaty finger at her. Elora, don't think you're hiding in the scullery during the inspection. She froze. The inspection, sir? The king has demanded a full pack inspection. Marcus spat. Every member, every pledge, every servant, even the broken ones like you. He wants to see the health of the pack. He stepped closer, towering over her. You will stand in the back row. You will keep your head down. And you will not embarrass me with your filth. If you do, I'll skin you myself. Her blood ran cold. A full inspection meant lining up. It meant the king walking past them. It meant being within touching distance of the most powerful wolf on earth. Lumina stirred groggily in her mind. Danger. Mate. Danger. Elora ignored the second word. It was just her delirium. I have a fever, sir. She lied, her voice trembling. I might be contagious. Perhaps it is better if I stay in the cellar. Slap! The back of his hand connected with her cheek, sending her sprawling across the polished floor. The copper taste of blood filled her mouth. I didn't ask for your opinion, rat, Marcus growled. You will be there. Now get to polishing. Elora dragged herself up, wiping the blood from her lip. There was no escape. She was trapped. She just had to hope that the wolfsbane was strong enough to fool a king. The driveway of the Obsidian Shadow Estate was lined with pack members. The warriors stood in the front chests, puffed out, trying to look formidable. Behind them were the families, and at the very back, in the shadows of the grand oak trees, were the Omegas. Elora stood between a boy named Toby, who had a limp, and an elderly woman named Martha. She had rubbed dirt on her face and neck, trying to mask any natural scent she might have left, and swallowed a second dose of wolfsbane an hour ago. Her stomach felt like it was being digested by acid. She was dizzy, sweating and trembling. "Steady, girl," Martha whispered, slipping her rough hand into Elora's. "Just don't look him in the eye. Kings don't notice dust like us." Elora squeezed her hand, grateful for the only kindness she had known in years. "I hope you're right, Martha." The sound of engines rumbled in the distance, a low growl that vibrated in the soles of her worn-out shoes. A silence fell over the crowd. Even the birds seemed to stop singing. A convoy of black-armored SUVs rounded the bend. They moved with predatory grace, the tinted windows hiding the monsters within. The lead car, a massive vehicle with the royal crest, a gold wolf rampant on a crimson field emblazoned on the door, came to a halt directly in front of Beta Marcus and the Pack Alpha, a weak man named Alpha John, who mostly let Marcus run things. The doors opened. 12 royal guards stepped out first. They were massive, wearing tactical gear, their auras so strong that several Omegas near Elora whimpered and dropped to their knees. Then the back door of the lead SUV opened. A boot hit the gravel. Then a leg. Alpha King Caelan Thorne unfolded himself from the car. He was terrifying. He stood over 6.5 feet tall with broad shoulders that strained against his black dress shirt. His hair was the color of midnight swept back from a face that looked like it had been carved from granite. High cheekbones, a sharp jawline, covered in dark stubble and eyes. Even from 50 yards away she could feel them. They were gold. Molten, burning gold. The power rolling off him was a physical weight. It slammed into the pack like a tidal wave. Alpha John bowed low, exposing his neck. Beta Marcus followed, though he looked resentful. Seraphina curtsied, fluttering her eyelashes, desperate for attention. "King Thorne," Alpha John stammered. "Welcome to Obsidian Shadow. We are honored." Caelan didn't smile. He didn't even look at Alpha John. He was scanning the crowd. He was hunting. "The oracle was specific," Caelan said. His voice was a deep baritone that vibrated in Elora's chest, making her suppressed wolf howl in agony. "She is here. I can feel the pull." Alpha John asked, confused. "My daughter is away at university. Your Majesty, but—" "Not your daughter," Caelan snapped. He began to walk. He didn't walk towards the warriors. He didn't walk towards the high-ranking members. He walked straight down the center aisle, heading toward the back, toward the servants. Elora's heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. "No. No, please. Not me." Seraphina stepped into his path, bold as brass. "Your Majesty," she purred, "surely you don't want to soil your boots with the help. I have prepared a banquet in the main hall. I would love to show you." Caelan stopped. He looked at Seraphina for a fraction of a second. "Move!" One word, laden with alpha command. Seraphina's knees buckled. She was forced to step aside, gasping as if she'd been slapped. Her face turned red with humiliation, and her eyes found Elora's in the back row. She mouthed the words, "You will pay for this." As if it was Elora's fault the king wasn't interested in her cheap perfume. Caelan continued walking. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. He was getting closer. 20 yards. 10 yards. Elora stared at his boots, black leather, polished to a mirror shine. He stopped. He was standing right in front of her. The air around him smelled of rain cedar and ozone, the scent of a storm about to break. It was the most intoxicating thing she had ever smelled. Despite the poison in her veins, Lumina scratched at the mental walls she had built. "Mate," she screamed. "Mate is here." Elora clamped her mental shields down. "Shut up," she begged her. "He will kill us." "Look at me," the king commanded. He wasn't speaking to the crowd. He was speaking to her. She trembled. If she looked, he would see the defiance. He would see the intelligence. He would see the wolf. I said, "Look at me." His hand reached out. His fingers, warm and rough, tipped her chin up. She was forced to meet his gaze. Gold met green. Time stopped. The sounds of the pack faded away. It was just her and him. She saw his pupils dilate, swallowing the gold. She saw a flicker of confusion, then intense, burning curiosity. "What is your name?" he asked softly. "Elora," she whispered. "Just Elora, your Majesty." He frowned, leaning in closer. He inhaled deeply, right at the crook of her neck. She flinched. He was smelling the sickness, the rot of the wolfsbane. "You are ill," he said, his voice changing from commanding to concerned. "You smell of death." I have a condition, sir," she stammered, reciting the lie she had perfected. "My blood is weak. I have no wolf." Caelan's eyes narrowed. He didn't believe her. She could see it. He could sense the void where her scent should be, but he could also sense something underneath it. "No wolf," he murmured. "Then why does my wolf want to tear this world apart to protect you?" The crowd gasped. Beta Marcus stepped forward, his face purple with rage. "Your Majesty, that is a servant girl, a defective. She's lying to you. She is nothing." Kaelin didn't look away from her. "I will be the judge of what she is." He released her chin, but his gaze lingered on her lips. "The inspection will proceed. But this one," he pointed at her. "She comes to the front. I want to see her shift." Her blood turned to ice. "Your Majesty, I can't. I told you I have no wolf." "Every creature has a spirit," Kaelin said, his voice hardening. "Tonight, under the blood moon, we will see yours. If you are truly wolfless, you have nothing to fear. But if you are hiding something from your king—" He let the threat hang in the air. He turned and walked away, his cape billowing behind him. Elora stood there, paralyzed. The wolfsbane suppressed the shift, yes. But the blood moon forced transformation even in the weakest wolves. And with the king's alpha command added to it, the dosage she took wouldn't be enough. If she shifted tonight, she wouldn't just turn into a wolf. She would turn into the white wolf, the legend, the target, and she would be shifting right in front of the man who ruled them all. The sun began to set, casting long, bloody shadows across the training arena. The obsidian shadow pack had transformed the dusty combat ring into a spectacle. Torches lined the perimeter, the flames licking at the darkening sky. Elora was being held in a holding pen with the other questionable's young wolves who hadn't shifted yet, and the elderly. But unlike them, she was guarded. 2 of Marcus's enforcers stood by the gate, watching her. "Look at her," one of them sneered, shaking like a leaf. "King's probably going to execute her for wasting his time." "Hope he gives her to us first," the other laughed. She sat in the dirt, hugging her knees. She had tried to run. Immediately after the lineup, she had bolted for the woods. But Marcus had anticipated it. His men tackled her before she even reached the tree line. They confiscated her vial of wolfsbane. She was beginning to withdraw. The poison was wearing off. The fever was replaced by a deep, aching itch under her skin. Her bones felt like they were vibrating. Lumina was waking up and she was angry. "Let me out," she growled in Elora's mind. "They threaten us. We kill them." No, Elora thought back frantically. "If you come out, we die. Kaelin will see you." "Kaelin is mate," she argued. "Kaelin is a king who executes anomalies to keep the peace." The drums started. The enforcers grabbed her by the arms and dragged her out of the pen. "Showtime, freak." The arena was packed. Bleachers had been set up filled with hundreds of pack members. In the center, on a raised dais, sat Alpha King Kaelin on a velvet throne. Alpha John and Beta Marcus sat below him. Kaelin looked bored as he watched the young wolves shift one by one. A boy shifted into a brown wolf. Kaelin nodded. A girl shifted into a grey one. He waved her away. He was waiting. When the guards dragged her into the center of the ring, the crowd went silent. The dirt was cold under her bare feet. She was wearing only a thin white shift dress, shivering in the night air. The moon was rising. It was huge, heavy, and tinted a deep rust red. The blood moon. The pull was instantaneous. A scream built in her throat as her bones began to heat up. It felt like her marrow was boiling. Without the suppressants, the shift was coming on fast and violent. "Elora Vance," Beta Marcus announced, his voice amplified by a microphone. "Claiming status wolfless, accused of deception." Kaelin stood up. He walked to the edge of the dais, looking down at her. The distance between them felt non-existent. "The moon calls Elora," Kaelin said softly, though his voice carried across the silent arena. "Do not fight it. Show me what you are." "I can't," she cried out, falling to her knees as a spasm of pain racked her spine. "Please don't make me." "Shift," Marcus bellowed. He pulled a shock baton from his belt and jammed it into her ribs. Currents of electricity tore through her. She screamed, arching her back. The pain shattered her concentration. The walls she had built around Lumina crumbled. "Enough!" Kalen roared, jumping down from the dais. He moved to stop Marcus, but it was too late. The trigger had been pulled. Her back bowed. The sound of cracking bones echoed through the arena, loud as gunshots. The crowd gasped in horror. Usually shifting was fluid. This was violent. It was 5 years of suppression breaking all at once. She screamed one last time, a sound that shifted from human to animal halfway through. Her vision went red. She felt her jaw extend, her teeth sharpen to razor points. Her hands clawed into the dirt, transforming into massive paws. Fur burst from her skin. Not the brown of a worker, not the grey of a warrior, not the black of an alpha. It was white, blinding, pure diamond white. She shook her massive head, shaking off the shreds of her human clothes. She stood up on 4 legs. She was huge, larger than any female wolf should be, nearly the size of an alpha. Her fur glowed in the moonlight, stark against the dark dirt of the arena. A collective gasp sucked the air out of the stadium. Silence. Absolute, terrified silence. A white wolf, the mark of royalty, the mark of the moon goddess's direct line, a creature that hadn't been seen in a century. She snarled, snapping her jaws at Marcus, who scrambled back in terror, dropping his baton. "Run," she told herself. She turned to bolt toward the exit, but a massive dark shape blocked her path. It was Kalen. He had shifted mid-leap. He was a monster of a wolf, pitch black, towering over her, his eyes glowing gold. He was beautiful and terrifying. She bared her teeth, preparing to fight. She would die fighting. But the black wolf didn't attack. He lowered his massive head. He whined a sound of longing and reverence, and then in front of the entire Obsidian Shadow Pack, in front of the nobles and the warriors, and the cruel Beta. The Alpha King lowered his body to the ground. He bowed. The silence in the arena was heavier than the humid night air. It was a physical weight, pressing down on the hundreds of wolves who had just witnessed the impossible. The Alpha King, the conqueror of the southern wastes, the man who had executed entire bloodlines for treason, was on his belly. He was submitting, not to an alpha, not to a council elder, but to the starving, abused Omega girl they had forced to scrub their toilets. Her wolf Lumina was vibrating with a mixture of smug satisfaction and terrifying power. He knows she purred in Alora's mind. He knows what we are. She stood there, a massive white wolf glowing like a fallen star in the center of the dirt ring. She was confused. Her instincts told her to run, but her soul told her to stay. The black wolf before her didn't feel like a threat anymore. He felt like home. Then the spell broke. Trickery. The scream came from Beta Marcus. He had scrambled to his feet, his face a mask of purple rage and panic. He grabbed the microphone, the feedback screeching through the speakers. "Do not be fooled," Marcus bellowed, pointing a trembling finger at her. "She is a witch. She has used an illusion spell. No Omega turns into a white wolf. Kill the beast. Kill it before she curses us all." The enforcers hesitated. They looked from Marcus to the kneeling king, unsure whose command to follow. "I said kill her!" Marcus screamed, grabbing a silver-tipped spear from a nearby guard. He lunged. He didn't make it 3 steps. The black wolf Kalen moved with a speed that defied physics. He was a blur of shadow. He slammed into Marcus, his massive jaws clamping around the Beta's armored chest plate. Metal crunched. Marcus shrieked as he was thrown 30 feet across the arena, crashing into the stone barricade with a sickening thud. Kalen didn't pursue him. Instead, he turned back to Elora. He stood guard, placing his massive black body between her and the rest of the pack. He let out a roar, a sound so deep it rattled the teeth in her skull. It wasn't just a noise, it was an alpha command amplified by royal blood. Submit. It hit the crowd like a shockwave. Every single wolf in the stands, Alpha John Serafina, the warriors, the families dropped to their knees. Some fell flat on their faces, whining in terror. The power of his voice forced them down. Only Elora remained standing. Kaelin turned to her. His golden eyes softened. He nudged her shoulder with his wet nose, a gesture of infinite gentleness. Shift Elora, his voice echoed in her head. It wasn't spoken, it was a mind link, a connection that should only be possible between mated pairs. Shift back. I have you. You are safe. She was exhausted. The transformation, the lack of wolf's bane, the adrenaline, it was too much. Her legs gave out. The white fur receded, her bones cracking and reshaping as she melted back into her human form. She collapsed onto the cold dirt, naked and shivering. Before she could even feel the shame of her nudity, a warm, heavy weight descended on her. Kaelin had shifted back too. He was shirtless, his chest heaving, but he had ripped his long ceremonial cloak from his shoulders and wrapped it around her. He scooped her up into his arms as if she weighed nothing. "My king," Alpha John stammered from where he was kneeling, his forehead pressed to the dirt. We didn't know. We thought she was—" Kaelin didn't look at him. He looked down at Elora, his eyes tracing the bruises on her arms, the scars on her neck from years of abuse, the emaciated curve of her ribs. His expression went from tender to apocalyptic in a heartbeat. "You didn't know." Kaelin whispered, his voice deadly quiet. "You didn't know that you were starving a moon daughter, that you were beating a white wolf." He looked up, scanning the terrified faces of the Obsidian Shadow Pack. "Pray to your gods," Kaelin said, his voice echoing through the silent arena, "because I am going to burn this pack to the ground, and I will start with anyone who ever raised a hand against her." He turned and walked toward the waiting SUVs, carrying her against his chest. As she drifted into unconsciousness, the last thing Elora saw was Serafina's face in the crowd. She wasn't looking at the king. She was looking at Elora, and her expression wasn't fear. It was pure, homicidal hatred. Elora woke up in a bed that was softer than clouds. For a moment, she panicked. She reached for her bucket and rag, expecting to hear Serafina screaming at her to wake up. But her hands touched silk sheets, not cold stone. "Easy, little wolf." She bolted upright. She was in a massive room. The walls were glass, overlooking a dense, misty forest that stretched for miles. A fire crackled in a stone hearth, and sitting in a leather armchair by the bed was King Kaelin. He looked different. He had bathed and changed into a fresh black shirt, but the intensity was still there. He was watching her like she was a rare diamond he was afraid would shatter. "Where am I?" she croaked. Her throat felt raw. "You are in the royal wing of the Obsidian Guest House," Kaelin said. He stood up and poured a glass of water, handing it to her. "Drink. You are severely dehydrated." She took the glass, her hands shaking. You didn't kill me." Kaelin let out a dark, dry laugh. He sat on the edge of the bed, careful not to touch her. "Kill you, Elora? Do you have any idea what you are?" She looked down at the water. "I'm a freak, a genetic defect." That's what Marcus said. "Marcus is a fool who will beg for death before I am done with him," Kaelin growled. He took a deep breath, reining in his temper. "Elora, look at me." She met his gold eyes. "You are not a defect," he said firmly. "You are a white wolf. In the old legends before the wars, the white wolves were the queens. They were the direct conduit to the moon goddess. They were the healers, the peacemakers, and the destroyers. He paused. They went extinct 100 years ago, or so we thought. Her head was spinning. But my parents, they were just regular wolves, omegas. Kalen shook his head. I had my investigators dig into your file while you slept. Your parents were found dead 5 years ago, yes. But they weren't your parents. DNA tests confirmed it this morning. She froze. What, you were stolen, Elora, Kalen said softly. You were taken as a pup. Someone knew what you were. They hid you in the obsidian pack, buried you in filth and abuse to mask your scent, to keep you weak so you wouldn't present. Why? She whispered, tears stinging her eyes. Why would they do that? Because, Kalen said, his hand finally reaching out to brush a stray hair from her face. Sparks flew where his skin touched hers, the mate bond flaring to life. A white wolf is the only creature powerful enough to challenge a king. Or to make him stronger. He leaned in, his voice dropping to a rumble. I have searched the world for you. Not because of a prophecy, but because my soul has been half empty my entire life. When I saw you in that dirt, Elora, I didn't see a servant. I saw my queen. She pulled back, slightly overwhelmed. I'm not a queen, Kalen. I don't know how to rule. I know how to scrub floors. I know how to hide. Then I will teach you, he swore. But first we must balance the scales. The door opened. A royal guard stepped in, bowing low. Your Majesty, the tribunal is ready. The prisoners are secured. Kalen's eyes turned hard as flint. He stood up and extended his hand to her. Come, Elora. You hid for 5 years. Today you stop hiding. Today you judge. I don't have anything to wear, she murmured, looking at the oversized t-shirt she was dressed in. Kalen smiled, a terrifying, wolfish smile. I took the liberty. He snapped his fingers. 2 female attendants entered carrying a dress. It wasn't a soft, frilly thing. It was black silk, structured, and sharp with silver threading that looked like armor. Wear this, Kalen said. Dress like the executioner you have earned the right to be. The great hall of the Obsidian Shadow Pack had been transformed. Just 24 hours ago, this was the room where Elora had spent years on her hands and knees, scrubbing wine stains and mud from the flagstones until her fingers bled. She knew every crack in this floor. She knew which tiles were loose and which ones held the cold the longest. Today she wasn't cleaning the floor. She was ruling from above it. A raised dais had been erected overnight, draped in the heavy crimson and gold velvet of the royal house. 2 thrones sat upon it. One was occupied by King Kalen, a brooding statue of dark power and lethal grace. The other was occupied by her. She adjusted the skirt of the black silk gown Kalen had provided. It was structured like armor, stiff and imposing, woven with silver threads that caught the torchlight. Around her neck sat the royal collar, a heavy band of platinum and obsidian that marked her as the king's mate. It felt heavy, a physical reminder of the sudden, terrifying elevation of her station. Are you ready? Kalen's voice was a low rumble, meant only for her. He reached over his large, warm hand, covering her trembling fingers. She looked at him. The golden eyes that terrified nations were soft when they looked at her. I don't know if I can do this, Kalen. Yesterday I was a ghost. Today I am this. You were never a ghost, Elora, he replied, his thumb brushing her knuckles. You were a storm waiting to break, and now it is time for the lightning. He signaled to the royal guards stationed at the massive oak doors. Bring them in. The doors groaned open. The sound of chains dragging across stone echoed through the silent hall. The entire pack, Hundreds of wolves who had once ignored her or spat on her stood along the walls, their heads bowed, terrified to make a sound. Beta Marcus and his daughter Seraphina were dragged in. They looked like fallen gods. Marcus, usually immaculate in his suits, was stripped to his undershirt, his arm in a sling where Kaelin had crushed it. His face was a map of bruises. Seraphina, the princess of the pack, was barefoot. Her expensive red dress was torn, her blonde hair matted. But while Marcus smelled of sour fear, Seraphina smelled of something else, acrid, burning hate. They were forced to their knees in the center of the room, directly in front of the dais. "Beta Marcus," Kaelin began. His voice didn't need to be loud to carry. The acoustic dominance of an alpha king filled every corner of the room. "You stand accused of high treason against the crown, crimes against the species, and the unlawful torture of a royal bloodline." Marcus looked up, sweat beading on his forehead. "Your Majesty, please, it is a misunderstanding. I did not know what she was. I swear it on my life, I thought she was a rogue, a stray we took in out of charity." Charity Elora spoke up. Her voice was shaky at first, but she stiffened her spine, drawing on the anger that had been simmering for 5 years. Is Charity feeding a child scraps from the dog bowl? Is Charity beating her when she coughs? Is Charity poisoning her every morning to keep her weak? Marcus flinched at the sound of her voice. He looked at her, and for a second she saw the old sneer try to surface, only to be crushed by the reality of her position. "Elora," he wheedled, trying a pathetic smile. "I was harsh, yes, but I gave you a roof. I gave you a home when no one else would." "Liar," Kaelin growled. He gestured to a royal investigator standing to the side, who stepped forward, holding a thick, leather-bound ledger. "We found this in your private safe. Marcus," Kaelin said, his eyes burning gold. "It's a lineage log, dated 5 years ago. You tracked Elora's parents. You arranged the rogue attack that killed them. And there is a note here in your handwriting. Subject is the white strain. Contain at all costs. Break the spirit, keep the blood. Breed to Seraphina's line when of age." A gasp went through the room. The pack members exchanged horrified glances. This wasn't just abuse. This was a calculated decade-long conspiracy to steal the most powerful genetic trait in werewolf history. "You knew," she whispered, the horror washing over her. "You didn't keep me because you needed a maid. You kept me because you wanted to use me as a brood mare for your grandchildren." Marcus's face went grey. He knew there was no talking his way out of written evidence. "She is a weapon." Marcus suddenly screamed, lunging against his chains. Spittle flew from his mouth. "A white wolf is too powerful. If she hadn't been suppressed, she would have challenged the hierarchy. I did it for stability. I did it for the pack." "You did it for yourself," Kaelin said, his voice flat and final. "And you failed." Kaelin stood up, drawing the ceremonial sword at his hip. "Marcus of Obsidian Shadow, for the crimes of treason and kidnapping, I sentence you to death. You will be taken to the boneyards and executed by the royal guard." Marcus began to wail a high-pitched, pathetic sound as the guards hauled him up. He kicked and screamed, begging Alpha John, begging the pack, begging anyone to help him. No one moved. He was dragged out into the sunlight, his screams fading as the heavy doors slammed shut. Then there was silence. Kaelin sat back down and turned his gaze to the girl kneeling on the floor. "And you," he said. "Seraphina." Seraphina didn't tremble. She didn't cry. She slowly raised her head, shaking the hair out of her eyes. Her gaze locked onto Elora's. It was manic, glazed over with a delusion so deep it frightened her more than her father's screaming. "You look ridiculous," Seraphina spat. Her voice was raspy but clear. "That dress costs more than your life. You're just a rat wrapped in silk, Elora. Everyone knows it. Look at them." She jerked her head toward the pack. "They're laughing at you. They are bowing to her." Kalen corrected his voice, dropping an octave, the growl vibrating the floorboards. "And you will do the same." "I will never bow to a toilet scrubber," Seraphina hissed. "I am highborn. I am the future Luna of this pack. She is nothing. She stole my moment. The king was supposed to be mine." Elora stood up slowly. Kalen moved to stop her, but she held up a hand. She needed to do this. She walked down the steps of the dais. The heels of her shoes clicked rhythmically on the stone. She stopped 3 feet from her. "I am not nothing, Seraphina," Elora said softly. "I am the one who cleaned up your messes. I am the one who sewed your dresses when you tore them. I am the one who took the blame when you broke your father's vases. I was strong enough to survive you, and that makes me strong enough to rule you. You think you've won?" Seraphina's eyes widened, a twisted smile spreading across her face. "You think because you shifted into some albino freak of nature that you're safe?" She shifted her weight. Elora saw a flash of movement. "Elora, back!" Kalen roared, launching himself from the throne, but he was too far away. Seraphina hadn't been searched properly, or perhaps she had swallowed it and regurgitated it. From the sleeve of her tattered dress she produced a blade. It wasn't metal. It was ceramic, invisible to the scanners, glowing with a coating of thick green paste. Concentrated wolfsbane, a dose that High injected directly into the heart would kill even a white wolf instantly. "Die!" she shrieked. She lunged. The blade came up in a blur aimed straight for Elora's chest. Time seemed to liquefy. She saw Kalen diving through the air, his hand outstretched, panic etched on his face. She saw the horror in the eyes of the front row spectators. She saw the green paste on the tip of the blade. Elora didn't have time to shift. Her wolf lumina was screaming in her head, but the physical transformation would take too long. Instead, something ancient inside her snapped. It felt like a dam breaking. A reservoir of pure, white-hot energy that had been building up for centuries in her bloodline rushed into her throat. She didn't think about it. She just opened her mouth and let the white wolf speak. "Kneel!" It wasn't a normal shout. It wasn't even an alpha command. It was the voice of the goddess. A visible shockwave of translucent white energy erupted from her body. It blasted outward in a perfect circle. The force of it hit Seraphina mid-air. It was as if she had run into a solid wall of iron, moving at supersonic speed. There was a sickening crack as the energy slammed into her. She was lifted off her feet and thrown backward, flying 20 feet through the air before smashing into one of the stone pillars that supported the balcony. The ceramic knife shattered into 1,000 pieces of dust. Seraphina slid down the pillar limp as a rag doll blood trickling from her nose and ears. She hit the floor and didn't move. The shockwave didn't stop there. It rattled the windows in their frames. It blew out the torches along the walls, plunging the room into semi-darkness. The pack members in the front row were knocked onto their backs by the sheer pressure of the air. Silence. Absolute ringing silence. Elora stood there, her hand still raised, her chest heaving. Her skin was glowing, literally glowing, with a faint pearlescent light. The air around her smelled of ozone cedar and crushed flowers. Kalen landed beside her. He had skidded to a halt, his claws extended, ready to kill. But there was no one left to fight. He looked at Seraphina's unconscious body. Then he turned to look at Elora. His eyes were wide, filled with a mixture of shock and absolute reverence. "The voice," he whispered, standing up slowly. He reached out his fingers, hovering over her glowing arm, afraid to touch her. That was the voice of the ancients. Elora. That power hasn't been seen since the first war. She looked at her hands. The glow was fading, retreating back under her skin. Her knees suddenly felt like water. I didn't mean to hit her that hard. She stammered, the adrenaline crashing. I just wanted her to stop. She tried to assassinate a queen. Kalen said, his voice hardening again as he looked at the guards. Check her. 2 guards ran to Seraphina. One checked her pulse. She is alive, Your Majesty, the guard called out, though his voice shook. But her ribs are shattered. She is in a coma. Good, Kalen spat. Let her wake up in the silent cells. Let her spend the rest of her miserable life in a cage, remembering the moment she tried to strike the moon and broke herself instead. He turned back to Elora, wrapping his arms securely around her waist. He could feel her trembling, and he pulled her tight against his side, offering her his strength. Look at them, Elora, he commanded softly. She looked out at the hall. The obsidian shadow pack was no longer standing. Every single wolf, from the elders to the youngest pups, was on the floor. They weren't just bowing. They were prostrating themselves, their faces pressed into the cold stone, their bodies flat. They had felt the power. They knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that she wasn't just a political figurehead. She wasn't just the king's wife. She was a force of nature. Rise, she whispered. They didn't hear her. Rise, Kalen bellowed, his voice echoing. Slowly, shakily, the pack got to their feet. But no one would look her in the eye. They looked at her feet, at the hem of her dress. They were terrified. Do not fear her, Kalen addressed the crowd, his voice ringing with pride. This is your queen. She is the breaker of chains. She is the light in the shadow. And as long as you are loyal, her power is your shield. He turned to her, lifting her chin so she had to look into his golden eyes. Let's go home, Elora, he said softly. You have done enough judging for one lifetime. She nodded, leaning into him. As they walked out of the great hall, leaving the unconscious body of her tormentor behind, she realized something. The girl who scrubbed the floors was dead. The white wolf had finally arrived. 3 months had passed since the day the floors of the obsidian shadow pack house shook with the voice of a goddess. The royal capital, the silver citadel, sat high in the northern peaks, a fortress of white marble and glass that seemed to float above the clouds. The air up here was different. It didn't smell of industrial cleaner, damp basements or fear. It smelled of pine snow and absolute freedom. Elora stood on the balcony of the royal suite, her hands resting on the cold stone balustrade. Below her, the city sprawled out like a blanket of stars, thousands of lights flickering in the twilight. She looked down at herself. Gone were the grey rags of the Omega. She was wearing a gown of heavy white velvet, embroidered with silver threads that formed intricate wolves running along the hem. Her hair, once brittle and dull from malnutrition, now cascaded down her back in thick, shiny waves, smelling of jasmine and honey. You're doing it again. She didn't need to turn around to know who it was. The air in the room shifted, becoming warmer, charged with the electric static of the mate bond. King Kalen stepped out onto the balcony. He wasn't wearing his armor or his intimidating black suits. He wore a simple white shirt, unbuttoned at the top. His sleeves rolled up to reveal the strong, marked forearms that had held her together when she was falling apart. He moved behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and pulling her back against his solid chest. He buried his face in the crook of her neck, inhaling deeply. Doing what? She asked, leaning into him, letting his strength seep into her bones. Looking for the cracks, Kalen murmured, his voice vibrating against her spine. I see you, Elora. You look at the horizon, but you're checking the floor. You're waiting for someone to come in and tell you you missed a spot. You're waiting for the dream to end. She let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. I spent 5 years looking at the ground, Kaelin. I spent 5 years trying to make myself small enough that Seraphina wouldn't notice me. It's hard to unlearn the habit of being invisible. Kaelin turned her around gently but firmly, his golden eyes locked onto hers. You are not invisible. You are the beacon that every wolf in this kingdom is looking toward. Tonight is your coronation. Tonight I place a crown on your head, and you take your place, not behind me, but beside me. I'm afraid, she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. I know how to survive, Kaelin. I don't know how to rule. What if I fail? What if I'm not the queen they think I am? Kaelin smiled a rare, soft expression that he saved only for her. A tyrant rules with certainty, he said. A true queen rules with doubt, because it means she cares about the consequences. You know what it is to be hungry, Elora. You know what it is to be cold. You know what it is to be powerless. That makes you more qualified to sit on that throne than anyone born in a palace. He reached into his pocket. I have something for you. The crown jewels are for the public. They are heavy, cold things. But this is for you. He pulled out a small black velvet box and snapped it open. Inside wasn't a diamond the size of an egg. It wasn't a ruby or an emerald. It was a ring simple and elegant, forged from white gold. Set into the center was a rough, unpolished stone. Obsidian. She looked up at him, confused. It's the stone of my old pack. It's volcanic glass, Kaelin corrected, sliding the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. It is created when earth and fire collide. It is born from pressure and heat. It is dark, yes. But if you hold it up to the light— He lifted her hand toward the moon. The rough black stone suddenly caught the light, shimmering with a hidden, translucent sharpness. It shines, he finished, just like you. You survived the darkness of the obsidian pack, Elora, but you didn't let it turn you into stone. You let it turn you into a diamond. Tears pricked her eyes. She looked at the ring, a reminder of where she came from, and a promise of where she was going. I love you, Kaelin, she whispered. And I love you, Elora, he replied, leaning down to brush his lips against hers. My white wolf, my queen, my life. The kiss was slow and deep, sealing the promise between them. It wasn't just a kiss of passion, it was a kiss of partnership. Somewhere in the distance from the barracks below, a wolf howled. Then another. Then another. A chorus of howls rose from the city, a song of celebration for the coronation. She pulled back, looking out at the kingdom that was now hers to protect. She closed her eyes and reached deep inside, finding the white wolf that had been caged for so long. She wasn't hiding anymore. She was standing tall, her fur glowing, her spirit unbroken. She threw her head back and let her answer. Her howl tore through the night air, pure, powerful, and commanding. It harmonized with Kaelin's deep roar, the white wolf and the black king singing together. She had hidden her true self for 5 years to survive. But tonight, as the moon watched over them, she knew one thing for certain. The hiding was over. The reign of the white wolf had begun. And that is the story of Elora and the white wolf, from a floor-scrubbing Omega to the most powerful queen the world has ever seen, proving that no matter how much dirt they throw on you, a diamond still shines. If you enjoyed this story of revenge, magic, and romance, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a new story. What do you think Alora's first law as queen should be? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.